Hey, everybody, this is Brett Ingram, and this is the optYOUmize podcast, the show that helps entrepreneurs build their dream business and dream life. Today, we're talking with Cam Awesome. He's a 12-time national boxing champion, 3-time Olympic trials champion, and former captain of the USA national boxing team, which is impressive for sure, but his real superpower is his ability to overcome challenges and adversity by learning to talk to himself differently, which is just awesome, by the way. I'm super excited because I think self-talk is something that's really, really important in every aspect of our lives. But I think so few people think about it or do it with intention. So with that, welcome, Cam, and thanks a lot for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm super excited. You have such a fascinating story. So I have a lot of stuff that I want to talk to you about, a lot of things I want to ask you. But can we start off with your personal story? I'm curious to know. Share with us a little bit about your background. I know you had some challenges starting in childhood. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I dealt with bullying early in elementary school, and I didn't know, and it was physical bullying, which is slightly different than what the challenges students today deal with. Uh, but I had a physical bully, and uh, my school's solution was to release me 10 minutes early from school so I could get home before he got to me because I had to walk past his house to get home. And from an early age, I avoided confrontation. And because I was afraid something was going to happen. I've never thought what that thing was going to be or when it was going to happen, but it definitely was going to happen, and it was probably going to happen soon. And that was as best as I could describe it because I didn't know what anxiety was. And I thought, and by the time I made it to high school, uh, I got beat up by a girl, air quotes. I got into an altercation with a girl. I'm not going to hit a girl back. So, girl hit me a bunch of times. But in the hallways, Cam got beat up by a girl. So, in 11th grade, I decided to join the boxing gym because I thought if I did the boxing workout, I would look like a boxer. And if I looked like a boxer, I would be safe.
And so were you?
Uh, so I joined the boxing gym and I was doing the boxing workouts and I thought the harder I worked out, the faster I would be safe. And inadvertently, I did what all the other boxers weren't willing to do. Like I showed up on time, I was consistent, I did cardio, I pushed myself constantly, and I became in better shape than everybody else in the gym. And my coach told me to get in the ring to spar. And that was never my objective, but I kind of got pressured into it. He asked me if I want to spar, and I was like, no, thanks. My mom's not going to let me. And everyone laughed. And I was like, I'm joking. And I had to spar, and I was so afraid because my whole life I've avoided confrontation.
Hmm.
And I dealt with the fight by they said you have to be in there for 3 minutes. They didn't say you have to fight the entire 3 minutes. So I basically ran from my opponent. Like I just was dodging and a lot of moving. And he eventually got tired. And that's how I would spar. It was 100% defensive base. And once my opponent got tired, I would land a couple punches. And it developed into this kind of unique boxing style that propelled me to be the number one boxer in the country within 2 years.
That's amazing. I mean, you're like the junior Floyd Mayweather, right? I mean, people say he's more defensive, but
Yeah.
so smart in terms of his strategy, and obviously it can work. But I have to say one thing that strikes me about your story is that I love the fact that you had somebody else sort of push you or see something in you where they wanted to bring that out because so often in our own lives, we feel inadequate or we feel like there's something about us and sometimes it takes somebody else to sort of thrust us into something. It's interesting. My story it pales in comparison to yours, but I'll tell you a funny little side. When I was in high school, I was doing track and I was a sprinter, but I wasn't really that good a sprinter. I was very mediocre. So I was never going to win any medals. I was never going to, go anywhere with it. And my coach comes over to me and he goes, "Come with me." And he grabs me by the arm. And I'm thinking to myself, oh no, he's going to bring me over to long distance because I ran cross country for 2 years. And he brought me over to throwing. And he's like, "Play with this stuff. Like, ask these guys, figure this out, work with the throwing coach." And long story short, I fell in love with throwing, became a javelin thrower, threw in high school and college, and, was seventh in New England in college. And I was like, it's all because this guy said, "Look, you're not going anywhere as a sprinter. Let me find something for you that's a better fit." Right. And I mean, I just think that that's awesome. And the fact that you found boxing as an outlet for a way, even if it was because you were afraid or had anxiety about an altercation, the reality of it is, look what it did for you. Right.
Yeah. And what I want to share, because it just didn't happen overnight. Well, it become the number one boxer became happened overnight almost, but it was a shift in mind change or a shift in environment. So my senior year of high school, my parents moved from New York to Florida. And this would be devastating for a lot of people, but for me, I got a whole new group of people. I got to reintroduce myself. I got to be whoever I wanted to be.
Yep.
I could have pretended I was whoever back in New York and no one would know the difference. So I pretended to be the person I always wanted to be. Fear kept me from being that person in New York because I was always anxious. But when I got to Florida, I just felt this freedom of reinventing myself. And I pretended to be this outgoing, loud, fun guy. And everyone believed it. I didn't believe it, but everyone else believed it. The problem or solution was my boxing gym was 6 miles away from my high school.
Wow.
And it was something I really wanted to do because I felt like I could be good at it. And I just had a 6 mile walk every day. And this is before like iPods existed, but I didn't have one.
Yeah.
So I just made up stories in my head for 3 hours a day. And I'm not even saying it as like I had this vision. Like, no, in my head, I'm selfish. I'm like, if I'm gonna make up a story, I'm gonna be badass in this story. So in the stories, I was knocking everyone out. I was winning all my fights. I had all the money, all the cars. This was in my imagination, but all of my stories, I was a winner. And I realized there was a correlation between how highly I spoke about myself and how well I did the gym that evening. And the better I did at the gym that evening, the more excited I was for that walk. And essentially, what I was doing was I was just patting myself on the back for 15 hours a day, 5 days a week, 3 hours a day. I'm just telling myself how much of a winner I am, how amazing I am. And that doubled with the fact that everyone around me was new. And that's who I was to those people. Everyone thought I was always that confident person. So they expected me to be that confident person, and I filled that role.
I mean, that's super cool. I mean, what a way to go about it. I mean, you used all of that time to your advantage that most people would dread and think, geez, I got to go all the way there. I'm just too tired today. I don't feel like it. But you really used it in a way to build yourself up and empower yourself, which is awesome. So you achieved a lot in boxing, but then you even had a setback there too. So what happened there, and how did you recover from that?
So after I won nationals in 2008, and every year 2009, 10, 11, and 2012, I won the United States Olympic trials to represent the US in the London Olympics, but was removed from and kicked off the Olympic team for not sending in my drug testing paperwork.
Wow.
I had left the country to fight in a tournament you get drug tested to compete in, but I forgot to tell the drug testing agency I was leaving. And they showed up to give me a random drug test, and I wasn't there. Missed drug test
Wow.
is a positive drug test. I got suspended for a positive drug test. I got the minimum 1 year suspension. Uh, but it like I went from this comp because I spoke highly about myself and then I would win. I would speak highly, and it fed. I was this confident, unstoppable person. I was 23 when I got kicked off the Olympic team, and it it killed my confidence because I realized I started boxing for acceptance,
Mhm.
and I could always say like, "Hey, look what I've done, look what I've won, accept me." And then I got kicked off the team, and I felt like all of the value I had as a person was gone, and I didn't know where to go from there.
That's, I mean, that's gotta be a really tough thing, and especially it's not, I mean, it's ultimately not your fault. Like, obviously,
My
there's a saying.
responsibility.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. My wife always says, right? There's a high price for negligence. I don't know whose quote that is, but it's so true. If you don't have every single thing in order all the time and you're not always on top of stuff, it's amazing how the one thing that you miss on the one day happens to be the thing, but it happens. And it's like you want to smack yourself in the head, but at the same time, it's like, we have so much on our plate all the time. It's really hard to remember everything. And so I do think it's also important to be forgiving of ourselves in those situations. But so in that situation, obviously you were devastated, but you use that also as a way to sort of birth your transformation. How did that play out? Like what did you do to pick yourself up from that and say, okay, I'm going to dust myself off and keep going?
Well, during the suspension, I'd gained a lot of weight, and I had to lose that weight to get back to boxing. And I couldn't get myself to lose the weight. I couldn't get myself to be consistent in the gym. I couldn't get myself to be productive. And and call it depression, call it what you may, but I couldn't get myself out of this funk. And one day I was just beating myself up. And in that moment, it felt so odd because it was like, I don't speak to myself like that. Something felt wrong. And I realized there was a difference between me in 2012 after getting kicked off the Olympic team and the me that was walking to the boxing gym every day. One of us liked me. And I realized that everything great I accomplished was because I thought I deserved to. Like I walked into the ring knowing I was the best and I deserved to win. I went to the gym knowing that I had to work out to get what I deserved. But it all started with me believing in myself. And being that confident person, I used to enter the ring knowing I was going to win. It's why I wore capes. It's why I danced to the ring. It's why I flipped into the ring. It's why I had fun. But after I got suspended, one of the major comments I kept seeing was, I bet he's humble now. And I looked into the definition of humble. Uh, have you ever done so?
I'm not.
Uh, do you have your phone on you?
No, I don't
Oh,
I
okay.
don't have it on me if
Okay.
I'm doing that.
I'll tell you. It's having or showing a low or modest estimate of one's own importance. And there's a few other definitions of low social, administrative, or political rank, to lower someone in dignity. And I didn't see how being humble was a positive trait when it came to my goal setting. And I realized that my greatness came from me just thinking I was great. The difference between me in that high school in New York, and me in that high school in Florida, I was literally the same person. It was how I thought about myself.
Mhm.
Because when I got down to Florida, I wasn't this cool, amazing, charming person all of a sudden. I might have still been that clunky, awkward guy, but I thought I was really cool. So, what I would like you to think about for yourself and even your listeners, what do you think about yourself? Is I believe people will treat you as poorly as you're willing to treat yourself. And if you talk down to yourself constantly, it's not going to be that odd when somebody else speaks down to you as well.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. And I think the interesting thing is we're always having internal dialogue with ourselves. I don't know that we're always conscious of it. And I think for a lot of people, if we don't intentionally, consciously fill that void, what happens is I think most of us skew toward the negative. We start thinking about, say things like, oh, why does this always happen to me? Like, oh, I can't, like, it's all about the things that you can't do or the things that you didn't get or whatever. And, I had read before that those things become self-fulfilling prophecies. As you start to say that to yourself, your mind will come up with reasons. Oh, it's because you stink. It's because you're just not that good at anything. It's because you don't deserve that. And it's not even true. It's not based in fact, but it's just something that your mind has to come up with the answer because you're asking it the wrong question. And I think that it's so important and valuable to be able to talk to ourselves in a positive way. Is there a specific strategy or a tool or method that you have for people to be able to do that?
Yeah. So when I didn't want to, don't make it seem like, oh, I was this super dedicated person. I was 16 years old, a 3 hour walk. I had nothing else to do. This is before we had that constant like hit of dopamine from our phones. A 3 hour walk wasn't that crazy in 2005. So, like, I wasn't a superhero by any mean, and I wasn't special. I just was willing to do what everyone else wasn't. And so I had that extra 3 hours and I would just speak highly about myself. But as I got older and you get more busy, you just don't have 3 hours to be unconscious. You can't meditate for 3 hours. That was basically what I was doing. So what I found myself doing when I returned to boxing was I would listen to rap music, specifically freestyle rap, because it's the only genre of music, it's the only place in life where someone unapologetically talks about how amazing they are. Rappers are the only ones to do it. Like, listen to any old Lil Wayne mixtapes. It was just how amazing he is, and it's basically rappers just stroking their egos. And I would listen to that music, and I would be the rapper in my head. I'm that person. I'm great. I've got all this. I've got all that. And that's how I would fuel myself. The music I would listen to constantly. I listened to the words of music and it would feed me. And a lot of it was angry, and I was angry at the time. But during the pandemic, I had a shift because I had retired from boxing, but I was still listening to that angry F 'em up music.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, I needed to change the vibrations of the things I'm consuming. It was good for because I was angry at the time. That's the music that I needed to feed me, but my objective is different in life. And I had to let go of the things that wasn't serving me. Brett, I love mixtape Wayne. That is ah the drought. Uh it just I can't listen to that music anymore because I listen to the words and that feeds into what I'm seeing in my life. And a lot of times, all the times, what we consume is what we feed in our life. I have a friend who loves true crime. She works from home. She listens to true crime podcasts all day. She watches murder mysteries at night. To sum up her day, she listens to people be murdered all day. She watches people get murdered in the evening. She dreams about people getting murdered at night. Brett, you'd never guess this. My friend, she has anxiety.
Yeah.
We often create the hell we exist within. But to change what our hell looks like or to change our hell, we have to change the things we're doing, but we're so addicted to the things we're doing. But as adults, Brett, who's going to tell you to put your phone away?
Yeah.
Who's going to
Nobody.
tell you to delete social media from your phone? No
Right.
one. You're an adult. So if you don't parent yourself, who will?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and I think it's really important. One of the things that you touched on in there too is, we have so many distractions now and so many easy ways to feel like gratified or to do something that we don't need to think about our lives, that we can escape into those things. And to your point, one of the things that I do is I deliberately avoid looking at the news, particularly in the morning. I'm not a news junkie anyway, but I literally will not even, because I don't want that polluting my mind when I start my day. I already know that 90% of the headlines are going to be negative. It's going to be how the world's falling apart. This thing's wrong. That's wrong. And so I'm not suggesting it isn't real or it isn't important, but I don't want that stuff coming into my consciousness to start the day. I want to start the day with something positive and uplifting so I feel better about the way that I start. And also what you said is funny in terms of even things that are for entertainment, right? Like the media and stuff. When I was a kid, when I would go to the movies, I'd go with my buddies. We would go see horror flicks. We loved them. I don't remember the last horror flick I've seen because I don't need more anxiety in my life. I get that it's a rush and it's a thrill, and when you have nothing else going on in your life, there's value in it. I'm not, obviously disparaging anybody who wants to go see horror movies, but my wife and I, like, it's a steady diet of like comedies because you want that levity at the end of the day, right? You want something that's going to make you laugh. And I got to be honest with you. One of the things I love the most about the podcast is to connect with other people on a real level because it becomes even days where my energy doesn't feel great or whatever else. I always feel awesome once I get off a podcast because I just love talking to people, hearing their stories, having them being able to share that with everybody. And it's such an invigorating feeling. And I think it's very easy for us to sort of distract ourselves from how we really feel or what our reality is with a lot of other things. But at the end of the day, we have to be intentional about it and create it consciously by feeding our minds and doing the things that are going to make us feel better. So I love all those points. I think it's super important. Um, I mean,
I, I I love that you found because it seems like the doing this podcast for you has brought you that joy and that light in your life. And I think so many of us struggle to find that thing, especially later on in life when our position in life changes. Maybe you're that person who goes out all the time and now you're a parent. You're like, okay, who am I as a parent? Maybe you've been a parent for so long and now you're divorced and you have to see life on your own and that looks different. Maybe your kids don't need you as much anymore. You're not an Uber driver. Maybe they left home. Like you have to start creating new habits for the new eras of your life. And no one tells you to do that. There's no rhyme or reason for it, I guess. I think it's you just have to feel when it's time for a change and know that change will be uncomfortable, not even because it sucks, it's just because you're not used to it. Like,
yeah, there's voids to fill, and at every my kids at this point are largely grown. My youngest is going to be entering his senior year of high school, and so it's funny because as you look at the horizon, our lives have been so much about them, everything about them for years, and there's joy in that. There's also a lot of sacrifice, and like you said, at some point when he goes off to college and it's the two of us here, right? Then we have to redefine who we are, what we do around, how we want to shape the rest of our lives and what we want to do. Now we've got ideas for that, which is great. But every phase has its challenges and it has its benefits and its things that make it difficult. And I think that no matter where you are in your life, it's important to always try to consciously consider, what it is you're doing and what's going to come next and everything else. So at least you have, an ability to fill it with things that are positive and that are going to bring you the joy and the satisfaction, and the sense of meaning, whatever that is for you. So, I mean, I do think that is super important. So, what about the mental toughness element of all this, right? So, let's say, okay, I'm in a situation where I want to uplift myself, and I want to be in a situation where I am, going to talk well to myself, and I'm going to try to build myself up. But I run into some struggles, and I find that habit hard to keep. What role does mental toughness play in all of this, and how do we sort of combine that with what we need to do in order to have the right mindset in order to do it that way?
oh, I think everyone differs because everyone's in different places. And I think I think getting advice from other people growing up, the advice we usually get is from not even the advice they tell us, is what we see them do as our parents. Like the only thing you really know growing up is what your parents do and what they don't do. That's your only spectrum. But as you get older and you meet different people and you see different ways they live, you can start to pick different things you want from other people's lives. So one of the things I would say is listen to speakers, listen to take advice from people, read personal development books, but don't take all of their advice. Don't even take all of my advice. Like listen to everything someone says and throw 99% of it away. It's not that they don't have the answers. They do have the answers, but it's the answers for them. Like it might not necessarily be the answers for you. And I think if you take enough from enough people, you'll start to see success in your life. But you have to assess what's holding you back. Now, that might be alcohol, that might be sex, that might be social media, that might be a side hustle that's not really making you much money, but taking up a lot of your time. Once you spot, you're able to spot out what's distracting you. If you remove that, it's easier to fill that void with something productive. Uh, but I think enough people don't like sit down and like verbalize exactly what they want. And I hate this whole like write down your goals. I was so against writing down your goals, and I started writing down my goals, and it started working. And I hate that it works, but as someone who used to say you don't need to write down, if it's in your head, it's in your head. Like as much as I hate saying it out loud, write down exactly what you want, because then you can't compromise. And once you see it, it's easier to obtain it. And then also write down what your distractions are. And it's I had to keep it real with me during the pandemic. I stopped drinking because I had I had to talk to myself. I'm like, should I? If you have thought maybe I should stop drinking, yeah, you're the last person to have that thought. There are people around you are like, maybe Brett should stop drinking, and
Yeah.
and it's not even that it has to be clearly detrimental to your life. If it's the thing that keeps you up late at Friday nights, late at Sunday, Saturday nights, late at Sunday nights, and then your Monday, your Tuesday, and your Wednesday are crap, then maybe even removing that will leave space for you to be even greater. But again, it's parenting ourselves. It's so easy to parent our kids, but it's hard for me to not. If I can afford something, why shouldn't I have it?
Yeah, it's so true though, and a lot of times I think we know when something's not the right thing or it's not really good for us, but we're like, yeah, maybe we'll do that anyway. But yeah, I do think I love your advice about listen to a lot of people, connect with a lot of people. I think, one of the things that one of my biggest career regrets is that, I've been a digital entrepreneur for 20 years and I largely built my business in a silo by myself. I have colleagues, but they're all online. We get together once, twice a year at a conference. That's really about it. And so I didn't foster enough relationships. When I was working for other people when I was younger, what I recognized is despite the fact that I had the freedom to work for myself, I wasn't as happy because when I was in a little office and I was talking with other people every day, that made me feel more energized, right? And it just made me feel better. And so it's fascinating about that. But you want to connect with as many other people and you want to listen to other people's advice. But as you said, then you want to evaluate it. Does this advice fit what I want to do? And does it fit how I am and what works for me? If it does, great, take it. If it doesn't, discard it. It doesn't matter how successful or popular somebody is. It doesn't mean everything they're going to say is right for you, right? As you said, it was right for them. It doesn't mean that it's right for you. And so I love that idea of being your own sort of filter and evaluating everything. But first and foremost, getting out there and getting other perspectives, whether it's through podcasts, whether it's through videos, whether it's through conferences, meeting people face to face in events, whatever. you definitely want to connect with other people, and then advice that you feel you can use and deploy in a way that helps you, great, use it. So I think, that's really, really smart advice. So what made you transition into motivational speaking? I mean, I don't know if you went right from boxing to motivational speaking, but obviously at some point you decided, hey, I want to share this message. So what is it that made you sort of make that transition? And how have the experiences that you've had up to this point, or up to the point you started doing that, shaped the way that you connect with the audience?
Oh. So after I became the number one boxer in the country, I would go back to schools, take over the gym class for the entire day, talk about boxing, talk about confidence, and talk about bullying. And it was just something I did. It was an agreement I made with my coach. He said he would coach me for free. And in exchange, I would go speak at schools because that was important to him as well. And uh, I would take over the gym class for the entire day so I can get every student. And I would talk about boxing gave me confidence and discipline. And I realized I was just really talking about boxing. And as the years would go by, I found myself talking about other issues like appropriate social media use uh, and somehow I got into resilience and mindset. And uh, after I got kicked off the Olympic team in 2012, I no longer could identify as an athlete because I didn't have a sport. And I realized how detrimental that is. Luckily for me, I had another chance at sport, but a lot of times when athletes figure this out, they can't go back. And usually it's even when they age out, whether they're done with high school or they're done with college. And let's say you're a college wrestler. After that, what do you do if you're not going to do MMA? So I saw that I lost my ability to identify as an athlete, and I realized I'll never want to do that again. I decided I was going to identify as an entertainer because I love professional wrestling. It's why I brought that energy to boxing and all the antics I would do. And I realized if I was an entertainer, I can brand myself in a way that I can be bigger than my sport. So when I step away from my sport, I have a career. So even though I was the number one heavyweight in the country, if I would go fight in Indiana, I would reach out to schools in Indiana and speak. And the coaches hated it because they're like, you need to be focused on the fight. I'm like, my mind is past boxing. Like I gave everything to boxing and it was taken from me. Boxing for me now is an avenue to do other things I want to do. So if I was doing a comedy show, so I started doing stand-up comedy as well in 2012. I always wanted to be a performer. That was my goal. I thought if I became really good at boxing, I'd get my own reality show, which was feasible in 2008 uh, because I want to be a performer. And in 2012, I got kicked off the Olympic team. I was like, I've done zero performing. So I started going to open mics and performing, just little crappy venues here and there. But I realized if I went to a different city and I said, me, the number one heavyweight in the boxing in the country, wants to perform, they allow me to perform at all these great venues and these comedy clubs would bring me in because I could sell tickets.
Yeah.
And it allowed me to get better at comedy a lot faster than the average comic because I got great stage time. And I was doing all this while boxing. And all this is documented in on Counterpunch. It's a documentary on Netflix about my return to boxing. But the idea
Awesome.
was to brand myself bigger than sports. And 2016, I won the Olympic trials, yay! But I lost an international competition and didn't get to go to Rio. So I decided that's when I was going to step away from the sport and focus on speaking full time.
Very cool. I mean, wow, what a story, and what a way to sort of find your way in, but also awesome that you would go in and talk to kids at schools, because I think sometimes as adults we underestimate the impact that we can have, especially on kids when they are, there are people that you spoke to in every audience that felt your story and knew exactly what you were talking about. And that will make them recognize their own worth and realize, hey, there's another way out of this, right? And when you can impact people like that, that's so powerful. And I mean, kudos to you for going the comedy route. Comedy is tough. I mean, comedy is not an easy thing to do and do well. So to even have the, the stones to do that, my tip of the cap there, because I don't even attempt comedy. Like, I'll crack a joke now and then, but don't confuse
I,
me with a
I,
comic.
I promise you, if your family was held hostage and you had to come up with a comedy routine and you had 2 years to perfect it, you would do it. There's nothing you couldn't do. There's just things you wouldn't want to do.
Yeah.
Because
True
when I
enough.
got into comedy, I wasn't a natural. Like, bro, I had one show, I bombed so bad that uh and I did a show the next day, and I had a friend message me and said I was that they were proud of me for trying again. That's how bad the first show went. And I was like, oh, thanks. I think, and the thing is, like, if you're bad at, if looking foolish is the cost of entry,
Yeah.
if you can just get past looking foolish, because beginners, you're always going to look foolish in whatever you start. If you try judo class now, if you try Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and no matter what age you are, you're going to look stupid. But you think it's okay to look stupid when you're a kid, but it's not okay to look stupid when you're an adult.
Yeah.
Like, we try things when we're kids, but now we're an adult. We're like, oh, I'll look foolish. Yeah, you're going to look foolish. That's how starting things look. You don't deserve to be good at it yet.
It's a great point. I mean, it's something, and it's funny because it's the same advice I give to people that want to have a podcast that don't. Tell them, look, I'll save you the suspense. Your first episodes, they're going to stink. I can tell you that already, because it doesn't matter like how charismatic you are. There's a skill to it. You've got to do it for a little while, and as you do it, you get better. Nobody got on a bike the first time and rode down the street and started popping wheelies. They fell off, they skinned their knee, you get back up, you try it again, and guess what? After enough time, you get to a level of competence. You keep doing it, then you get to a level of you're riding down the hill, holding your boombox in your arms, riding no hands, flying down the hill. You know what I mean? But it takes a while to get to that point. So it's great
Here's,
advice. You just got to have that courage to step out there and do it.
yeah, here's the difference though. When you're a kid, you have someone standing next to you on that bike, encouraging you. And if you fall off, they're like, no, no, you got to get back on again. But as adults, when we look foolish or we don't feel comfortable, no one's going to tell us or force us to do that thing again. So you might do karaoke once, or you might try an open mic, or you might try to go out and do poetry, and you look foolish. You're like, oh, well, I tried that, not doing that again. And it's like, well, not until you do it like 14 times do you actually have fun doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great point. So all right. So I know you're not a big social media guy, but is there a place people can find you, connect with you, learn more about you?
Yeah, and I check my social media from my laptop. I just don't. I'm big on productivity, and I realize I don't make any money off of social media, and I spend a lot of time on there. So, and it's just a distraction. Doesn't bring me as much joy. And so, anyway, you can find me at CamF Awesome on all social media because I'm not famous enough for anyone to try to steal my name. And camfawesome.com.
That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. All right. I have one last question I have to ask because I think it's important. I always want to know what everybody's going to say. And that's, what's your number one tip for success as a business owner or an entrepreneur?
No one's coming to save you. Figure it out.
All
You
right.
have all the information at your hands. ChatGPT, you have everything there. Back in the day, information was the currency. It was a commodity. Like, it was hard to get. Now we have all the information. The currency is action. What are you going to do with the information you have? Get resourceful, get creative.
Yeah, I love that advice. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of people have great ideas. If you don't execute on the idea, it's just an idea. And then somebody else does it and you say, "Oh, I had that well, they did it and
Yeah.
you didn't." And that sometimes, is all the difference in the world. So, all right, with that, just about time to wrap things up. I want to thank you so much again, Cam, for coming on, sharing all your insights, great tips with us. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And as always, remember, no matter what you want from your business and your life, don't compromise, optimize.